Today, there's American as pie and cooler than your favorite Chinese HT. We're hanging out with the guys from Signal Stuff tonight, so stay tuned for next Live Free and Ham. Hello and welcome to Live Free and Ham podcast. This is our weekly show where we discuss ham radio topics in New Hampshire, New England, and beyond. And we're thrilled to have you here, whether you're a regular listener tuning in for the first time. We always appreciate you, and thanks again for joining us tonight. So let's get into our usual here. I'm your host, Eric, call sign N1JUR, and I'm with my co-hosts.
It's Paul, N1OG.
And Todd, W1STJ.
And we have two special great guests tonight, Richard and Ben from Signal Stuff. Go ahead and introduce Ben. You can start first and go ahead and introduce yourself.
All right, I'm Ben, KF7KGR.
I'm Richard, KD7BBC.
All right, cool. Well, we are going to get into some fun topics tonight with these guys. We're looking forward to it. Should be real fun. But as we always do, before we get into our show and our topic, we got a couple of things to get you caught up on. Our storefront over at livefreeandham.com/shop is always packed full of merch and other awesome, cool things. We actually got a couple of purchases earlier this week that kind of came through. We want to thank Derek Payne. He grabbed our limited run whiskey glass, and that kind of leads me into our next thing. If you are a fan of Live Free and Ham, and you got to be a collector and a lover of the finer spirits, well, we got an exciting opportunity for you. For a limited time only, you can grab your very own limited whiskey dram, Live Free and Ham branded. It's custom etched. Man, I could talk today with our iconic logo. All right. So this is an exclusive piece that's sure to elevate your collection. But, hurry, once they're gone, they're gone. So you don't want to miss out on the fantastic chance to own an awesome, unique glass and be part of a elite group of folks that, are a step above of most of our regular listeners there. So, head over to our show as always, shop, and always check that out. And you can pick those up. But like I said, when they're gone, they're gone. All right. Well, we always love feedback. And you know that when we get feedback from you guys, we share it with everybody. And there are three ways you can obviously get a hold of us. And we always like to share that in every one of our episodes. There's a link in our description. You can reach out via SMS. You just tap that link and send us a nice text message, and we'll be happy to read it on our next show. You can always leave us a voicemail now. We decided to open up a voicemail line there. And so you can share your deepest thoughts, express your devoted love for our show, or even remind us that our warranty on our HF radios need to get updated. And, again, we're always here to listen. And that number to call is 978-233-1142. You will get a lovely voicemail, and you can leave us a nice long message, and we'll make sure we play it on our next episode. And as always, for those folks that liked to do the basics, we got the typical email where you can still send us a email to livefreeandham@gmail.com, and we'll be glad to share that on our next show. And so with that, we always have a once a month live stream. So, now we're in the month of getting into the month of January, and, we are now going to weekly episodes. So you're getting us 5-6 times a month in some cases. So now you're also going to get on top of that a live stream. And so the way you kind of get involved is head on over to our YouTube channel at Live Free and Ham podcast, and make sure you subscribe and share it, and make sure you hit that alert bell, and it will notify you when we go live, because we're usually all over the map, and sometimes we don't even know when we're recording. So, just want to make sure if you want to be in on the action that you set that notify bell. And as always, I got to take a sip of water here, our little secret. If you want to be one of those cool kids, you can always head over to our Patreon page. It's livefreeandham.com. It's in the footer there. As a subscriber to our Patreon, you can get immediate access to all the shows and stuff like this, the behind-the-scenes content that we talk about, the venting of Paul, of Todd's, work life, and all of our other issues, and just the general banter. It's going to be all available in an uncut version for all of our Patreon members. So if you're not a Patreon member, make sure you head over to livefreeandham.com and check out our Patreon page and become a subscriber. And you'll always get all of the early notices on when those are released, and the discounts, and a bunch of other stuff. So, get on over there and become part of that membership. So with that, let's dive into our first segment real quick here.
Ladies and gentlemen, can I please have your attention? I've just been handed an urgent and horrifying news story.
Hey everybody, we got some news.
Slow down, Boog. Let me handle this. We've got some news. I've got bad news and bad news.
I have reviewed ship's personnel, Captain.
Congratulations, you've got mail.
So, this is our usual mailbag review segment. Todd, we got anything in the mailbag? Nothing in the inbox at all?
Nothing this week.
Ugh.
Nothing.
All right.
Nada.
0, which is a bummer. So, you know what that means? We're going to start cracking some heads. People, let's go. Come on. Start getting on your mobile phone, sending us emails, sending us reviews. You know you can hit us up. You can do it via voicemail now. You can do it via email. You can even use SMS text messaging. Come tell us, how we're doing. Let us know what's going on, whether you like the show. And, just give us a review. We always are looking forward to it. So, yeah, sad to hear. But, the show must go on as always. So we're going to continue on.
Doing good. Good. Doing good.
You do, that's good.
Do good? Do good?
You're doing good.
Absolutely, I do. Good.
Doing good, Bob. Doing real good.
Right now, my only outlet is my ham radio.
All right. Well, we are in our Do Good episode. As we like to say, we all like to aspire to do good in ham radio. So whether you're assisting in a disaster, maybe providing communications for a local road race, or hosting that awesome POTA meetup, we all love to participate in ham radio activities. So, however I feel like, and we share the same, thoughts around here at the show, that, we allow all the negative voices to take, front and center. So, and overshadow a lot of our, enjoyment of the hobby. So no more. We've decided that they don't get a place here. You can come here and be louder and share all the great stuff you're doing in the hobby. And so we say, hey, come submit something to, Doing Good episode, and we'll happily share it, whether it's with your club, with a group of guys and gals that are getting together. And you can always do that, obviously, through all of our regular channels. But the easiest way is to do it over going to livefreeandham.com/do-good, fill in the form, and we will happily share it. And like we always say in every episode, if you are, type A and you like to go above and beyond, we offer the win link option. And what that gives you, well, you send a win link email for Do Good episode to Paul, and he and I will, or any of us will read it on our next episode, and we'll invite you to come hang out with us in our next live stream. So, if you want to be on and hang out with these guys when we do our next live stream, send us a win link email and we'll happily share it, and we'll make sure we get you, into that whole process there. So just like our reviews, man, nothing this week in the inbox. However, we always have backups to our backups because we're ham radio operators, right? So one is none and 2 is 1 is the old motto there. So I have got a backup here. And so with this one, I'm going to kind of share the story real quick. Again, it's close to a lot of us here because we're all part of the same club in the general area here in New England. But, I'm going to share it with you guys anyway with the hopes of inspiring you. And maybe you'll go out and do this stuff in your own, places and home and other clubs. So, recently we had just gotten off of an opportunity where we wanted to try some winter hiking in our club. I preferably had a bucket list item that I wanted to get off and try some winter hiking and actually see if I could, get up and do a soda. And so I got a couple other guys interested, and we all kind of banded together, and we decided that, we're going to go hike Packmanadnock. And so for those that might not know where that is, that's in Miller State Park in New Hampshire. It's a very light trail. It's a very, it's a smaller of the mountains in the general area, but it was still, an interesting hike. We had a bunch of guys that were, all coming to cheer us on, hanging out. And we all kind of met in the parking lot in the morning, had our coffees, chit-chatted a little bit. And before we broke off to hit the trailhead there's a couple other guys there that were, doing ham radio. They decided, hey, they weren't into the hiking mode, but you know what? They were going to get together and they were going to do POTAs in the parking lots and hit a couple of the POTA parks in and around the area. So the day, I have to say, once we finally got to the top, was jam-packed ham radio everywhere. The RF was flowing, we were making contacts. We were talking, mountains to mountains. And then on top of it, we had a very good friend of ours who's also a regular here of the show, Tim, KC1QDK. He decided to do the 160 contest for CW. And so he was at Mountain Monadnock, operating from the parking lot with his long wire and hanging out with a whole bunch of other people and just having an awesome day of ham radio. And it was really cool to see and talk to people, summit to summits, everywhere and anywhere that just wanted to, play ham radio. So I share those stories because I know, Paul, I mean, you can chime in with a little bit of, input there. I mean, how was your experience with that?
Well, so I actually thought one of the coolest parts of that whole thing was when we were up at the summit. Now there's three of us that are actively making contacts between UHF, VHF, and HF, and a group of ladies came up and they wanted to join us in the little shelter and kind of just sit and have some lunch. And they're like, "What are you doing?" Talking about ham radio. And so one of the ladies happened to, she was an Army veteran, and when she was in the Army, her father was a signaleer in the Army, and so she was very interested. So I gave her a little card so she could get to know a little bit more about ham radio. And I figure, I mean, anytime that we're out and we're having fun, that's a big win. But anytime we're also expanding the hobby into other people's lives, that's an even bigger win.
Yep.
So it's fantastic.
Yeah, and it dovetails into our conversation tonight, man. These two guys here that we have on the show tonight definitely are pioneering and getting more people into the hobby through what they do. So we'll dive into that a little bit more. But yeah, that was an awesome event, and so hopefully that inspires you to maybe submit one of your stories, no matter how big or small, no matter what it is, share it with us because we want to spread the happiness of ham radio out there. Just to say to folks, hey, you can go out and do this stuff. You don't have to be worried about whether people are telling you you're putting on tinfoil hats and talking to aliens because we're all having fun. We're all practicing. We're all learning how to, be great amateur radio operators. But at the same time, we're building friendships and, enjoying being in the outdoors because, ham radio is 1,000 hobbies. That was hobbies of 1,000 hobbies, I think is the motto there. So, we all cross over in different stuff there. So, all right. Well, with that, now we get into our real soup to nuts stuff here. Let's dive into
And now for something a little extra with Todd W1STJ.
All right. Yes, you've heard it here. This is where we help Todd study for his extra class license. In each episode, we pick 3 questions from the extra class question pool to test his knowledge to hope he gets his upgrade, and he's doing great so far. So if you'd like to follow along, you can always head over to hamstudy.org, which is a great resource to help you prepare for your test and is recommended by 3 out of 4 volunteer examiners because the ARL was unavailable for comment once again at the time of our survey. So without any further delay, I hand it over to our VE Quizmaster. Paul, take it away, sir.
All right. Well, Todd, I'm super excited that we are progressing through the sub-elements. And now we are starting sub-element number 6. So question number 1 from sub-element number 6. What is the purpose of connecting Zener diodes between a MOSFET gate and its source or drain? Is it A, to protect the gate from static damage? B, to protect the substrate from excessive voltages? C, to keep the gate voltage within specifications and prevent the device from overheating? Or is it D, to provide a voltage reference for the correct amount of reverse bias gate voltage? There's the music, so now you can think.
All right. Yeah, thank you.
This gets you to the delay.
All right, I'm going to go with D.
Ooh.
All right. Eric?
Oh, man. I'm going to go with A.
All right. Ben and Richard, do you guys want to chime in what you think the answer might be?
I'm just going to say it sounds like we're playing Who Wants to Be a Millionaire.
It's close.
My final answer.
I might be wrong on this, but I think it's probably B, but this is not one of my areas of strength. So we'll see.
All right. Well, Todd said D, which is incorrect. Eric said A, A is the correct answer.
Great job!
Yes.
So to help you, if you remember that static shocks deliver kilovolts, you might hastily choose distractor to protect the substrate from excessive voltages. But that is the incorrect answer because substrate, the material beneath the transistor, is sturdy and not at risk. So instead, you need to protect the gate from static damage.
Emotional damage.
All right.
All right, Todd. So question number 2 has a figure. So here's your image. And so in this figure, E6-3, which is the schematic symbol for a NOR gate? Is it A, which is number 4, B, number 3, C, number 1, or D, number 2?
And it's NOR? Okay.
I'm going to go A, number 4.
I need some music.
Eric? You need the
I
music so you can think?
Yeah, exactly. NOR gate. I think it's 4, so that'd be A.
All right.
Ben?
Seems like everybody is in agreement.
Yeah,
I'm gonna
one's
go
an-
with that,
one's
too.
And 2 is an and, 3 is an or, and 4 is a nor. So it's A.
Sounds like he's repeated some mantra
A is
there.
the correct answer.
There we go. All right.
See, logic gates, that's just programming. I know those. That's not a problem.
That's where I had to dig back.
But what does it look like?
Yeah.
All right,
All
here we
right.
go, Todd. For the third and final question, what best describes a pull-up or pull-down resistor? Is it A, a resistor connected to an op-amp output that prevents signals from exceeding the power supply voltage? B, a resistor connected to the positive or negative supply used to establish a voltage when the input or output is an open circuit. C, a resistor in a keying circuit used to reduce key clicks. Or D, a resistor that ensures an oscillator frequency does not drift.
You know this one, Eric? I'm going to go with B.
I think it has to do with the op amp, but yeah, I'm gonna go with A.
B.
I've got to stick with my trend of being the guy who knows nothing and say the best pull-up resistor I know is my toddlers.
Sorry, my audio was all messed up, so I didn't hear any of the answers.
I said B.
I like
All right.
Ben's answer. He was saying it was Huggies related. Pull up.
All right. Todd says B, and B is correct.
Oh, wow.
Get the song, boys.
Bring it on.
You ever have to connect a GPIO circuit, you'll need to know that one.
Hopefully I won't.
So your hint for this one is the terms pull up and pull down could be thought to imply negative and positive. The correct answer is the only one that includes those terms.
That was and that's not bad for like I said on
For all
on the
electronics, yeah.
quiz. I'm at 10%, so I did better with you guys than I am on the study app.
All right. Well, so if you're on the journey to studying for your technician general,
How many did you get? How many did you get right, Eric? Just for the record.
2.
You got 2?
I got 2. Yeah, I got 2.
Don't only
Sorry.
got 1.
Okay. Well, then, I get the song then. All right. Well, so with that, all right. If you're on the journey to study, we did. So if you're on the journey to study for your technician general or extra class license, in that case, hamstudy.org is an excellent resource to getting your ticket. And again, if you've recently received your license or you just recently got upgraded, we want to know. So you can be recognized on our next episode. So send us an email at livefreeandham@gmail.com, and we will surely mention you on our next episode. All right. So with that, I only have one thing that I need to add.
Phenomena.
That's how I feel.
Phenomena. Phenomena.
Let that one stick in your head for a while. All right. So with our usual format, we always like to ask our guests first. So we'll start with Richard. What's been going on in your ham radio week, sir?
Well, it's kind of parallel to ham radio, I guess. So I've spent the last 3 days playing net control in a non-ham radio environment. So that was kind of interesting. If any of you are familiar with the fantasy author Brandon Sanderson, he had a 3-day convention called Dragonsteel Nexus 2024, and I headed up the communications committee for that. So at least the volunteer part of the, semi-volunteer anyway, complicated, but led a team of 10 people who were acting as net control, coordinating the communications on non-ham radio frequencies. And it's a fun opportunity to train people who are very much not experienced with emergency communication type, supporting an event communications, and see why the things that we teach as far as best practices and stuff are actually best practices, because people forget and it causes problems. It's like every time you're like, see, and that's why we do that, and that's why we do that, and the rest of my team's just not, oh yeah, that makes sense. So that was fun.
Nice. Now, do most of these people actually have some prior, net control experience, or are they just all really green behind the ears?
One or two of them had a little bit, but for the most part, this team did not. No. And I guess that's the strongest in my head. But this has been a crazy week because on signalstuff.com, we just did our Black Friday sale last weekend.
Oh boy.
And so we had roughly this, had just over 800 orders, which is about half as many as we have in a normal month over the course of 3 days. And this is coming out of we had some issues with manufacturing. We had to discard about 600 antennas, so our inventory levels got low, and we were just struggling to get them back up. We were just almost back to our normal levels, and then we got into the sale. So I spent the first half of the week super gluing tips onto radios, so that we could, because that's the easiest part of the task, to parallelize or onto antennas, so we could get those shipped as quickly as possible. So
you heard it here, folks. Those things are handmade with love. Every one is untouched by Signal Stuff, folks. So you can't complain that it's machine developed.
I still have my super glue and the syringes that I got from the pharmacy with a bent needle thing that I used to inject the tips in. They're still out because I haven't had time to clean up after that since we finished.
So both of your index fingers and thumbs are stuck
not long
together?
ago, I did all of that with 1.5 hands.
Wow, dude. Well, there you go. You need to run out and buy your. Okay, hold on, hold the boat there for a while, while Richard's getting his hand, mended back up. Then go and buy more Signal stuff.
So that was my week. Go ahead, Ben. Top that.
Yeah, well, I had to send Richard a sidebar conversation. Dang it, you stole my story. Because my week in ham was pretty much the same week as his, although I didn't do any of the fun net control stuff that he did the last few days. The first part of the week. Richard is pretty much, he's my dealer in all things ham radio. He's the reason that I got into ham radio, and he's the reason I'm still in ham radio. Honestly, we can talk more about that later. But antennas, that sale was kind of crazy. And we spent the first couple of days just super gluing and putting in tips and trying to get those things out to people. So
there's his workstation over there.
Yep, that computer's where I sit. Although
you
there was,
you put him
for
in the
a day,
corner, not even in front of the window. Like he's not able to even look out the window. Oh, you're by the window, so you can't even look out the window though.
We're in the basement. There's nothing to see out the window.
Metal.
There we go. Well, my apologies on that one, but yeah, great. It sounds like So you didn't participate in any of the net control activities that Richard was doing, or you just totally
No, I
stood
had a
by and
different
watched the
role at
train
that
wreck?
convention. Yeah,
Okay.
I've done net control stuff with Richard in the past, and I was also at the same convention. But it's a big thing. There's a lot of things going on, and so I was volunteering in other aspects.
Oh, cool. Very cool. So yeah, so Richard is your official. What's the word we use, Todd, for you and me when I show you something and you just go out and buy it the next week? Not inspiration. What's the word I'm thinking of?
Instigator.
So
yeah.
you always
the
force
guy that
him
makes
to
me
buy
broke.
something.
Yes, that's right. Exactly. I always help Todd spend his money, so it's probably the same
Spends my
similar.
money.
Yeah.
So, well, welcome to the club. Cool. All right. Well, it sounds like we're going to definitely get into some good conversation here with you guys in a bit. So, over to you, Paul. Obviously, how is your ham radio week, sir?
Well, so let's see. I finally got my amp connector changed over.
Okay.
So I have a old ETO Alpha 374. I believe it's from like 1973. The original receipt came with it, which is fantastic. But the input for the amplifier is an RCA connector, and so I had an adapter, to go from a regular coax to an RCA, and it kept like wiggling loose, over time, and so like all of a sudden I'd be like, wow, my SWR is going crazy, and the signals just aren't there. So it was an interesting bit, getting the amp over onto the toolbox behind me. And open it all up and carefully opening that hole up to put a bulkhead connector through there. But I'm so glad that I did it because the received signal strength is so much better now. It's so much more improved. And then we went on our hike and successfully activated the summit. So now I got 2 summits successfully activated, plus 21 contacts for the park. So it was a good week.
Yeah, totally. Yeah, that summit.
Sounds like the moral of the story is that there's a reason we don't use RCA connectors for our HT antennas.
And some say about the same thing with the PL259s too, as well. So whatever connector you love to hate the most, I guess. Cool. All right. Well, with that, Todd, how is your ham radio week, sir? Hopefully, it's got some ham radio in it.
It does. So I was net control 2 days this week. Friday, I covered for Tim Casey won QDK because he was out camping in this cold weather, doing what was it, the 160
CW contest,
CW event. So I covered for him. He's covered for me a bunch of times. And what I did on Friday is I actually recorded myself doing net control for my first video.
Mm-hmm.
Now.
Oh, you recorded it?
Oh, I recorded it.
Yep. Oh, sweet. Nice job. Very cool.
So I have a video that I'm going to work. And then I did find out that my youngest son is quite the video editor. And he made a video of my wife working at one of her Sleep in Heavenly Peace, where they make beds for underprivileged kids. And she goes to this barn and she preps the beds, so they get made, and then she goes and smooths them out, makes sure, and gets all the pieces together, and then they do a shipping, and they bring it to the house and they build it. So she filmed herself doing it, and he was able to make like a little short clip of it speeding up. He put music to it and everything, and it was actually really good.
Wow.
So nice. I think I might employ my youngest to be my video editor, at least to help me out with it, especially if I get behind, and see how he does.
Yeah, that sounds kind of familiar.
Why are you laughing? I think it's a brilliant idea.
Well, the reason why I'm laughing is because I know you've been dragging your feet for a long time to make a video, and then now all of a sudden this opportunity comes up that your son's able to produce videos, and it's like, oh, cool! I've got someone to do my job. Awesome.
Well, wait a minute. I did my video before I knew he could edit, so I had it in my mind. Okay, I'm going to do this.
Okay.
Mm-hmm. And I've been researching the video editors, like which one is going to be best. I know you guys use, what do you guys use? DaVinci. And then the other one is Final Cut Pro. And I've been watching videos, and of course, they're not helping me because there's good things on each of them. Yep. So I got to pick one. So maybe I'll go with DaVinci, but Final Cut Pro seems like it can do more stuff. true or not? Or you guys?
No. Well, they're about the same. They all do the same stuff. It's just how much more money you want to throw at Final Cut Pro for their plugins and stuff.
Oh, is it more money? I didn't even look at money yet.
Yeah.
All right. So anyway, so we're gonna get this first one done. I'm gonna mess around with it this week. Try to put something stupid together. Throw it up on YouTube, so I actually have a channel now that people can go look at. And yeah, so that's what I did. Ham radio. I did get worried. We had a little bit of ice and snow in my. I have my dipole up there, and it survived. I noticed that if I got a lot of ice on, I just get on the radio and start transmitting. It seems to melt pretty quick. So I look out the window and I say, "Oh, there's a lot of ice in there. I've got to go play ham radio for a little bit." So I did a little bit of that. I did upload. I had a whole bunch of logs that I had forgotten to upload onto my from the summer. Really, all my POTA logs. I just totally spaced and uploaded them onto my main log. So I did that.
I was gonna say I haven't seen my credits for some of the parks I worked on, so now I'm gonna finally get.
Well, they're up there now. I gotta see if they make it to QRZ or not, but I did get them in there. So apologize those that have been waiting. Just send me an email or something and tell me to get off my ass. But besides that, that was about it. It was I got to clean my shack up. I've been starting to do that. It's taking a little longer than I thought because I got to get a picture because I think there's going to be a shack roast or whatever.
Yeah, actually, it's a good segue there, my friend. We're by the time this airs, it'll probably already have happened. But yeah, we're going to be winding down the end of the year, and so we've been seeing a lot of folks post some shack photos in our Discord there, and so we thought, well, hey, what better than let's sit down as ham radio operators and overanalyze their shacks and say what our personal opinions are of them. And we'll maybe award one. We'll have to figure that one out a little bit. We haven't flushed that whole deal out there yet, but yeah, that's coming soon for sure.
Hey, Eric, how was your ham radio week?
Well, thank you for asking, Paul. I appreciate that. My ham radio week, I have to say, is been fun. I've been, like Paul mentioned earlier, getting ready for, and when we finally had that hike up pack, trying to make sure I had all my gear set up. And the funny part was I analyzed it, went through the pack several times, making sure I had it all organized. And we get up to the top, I took the radio out, put it on the bench, didn't even take it out of the bag, didn't do anything with it, didn't touch my gear. we used Paul's 891, we used Keith's 705, both great radios and whatnot. But my little FX4CR that I was like all prepared to set up the antenna with and use and whatnot, just didn't touch it. So it's the way it is.
I forgot your analyzer.
Well, yeah. Well, I wouldn't have needed my analyzer either way because I realized I had the actual tuned Reliance antenna end fed halfway. So I had Matt sent me a test transformer that he wanted me to. Yeah, he was doing a special winding on. So he's like, hey, just take it with you, try it out. So I figured, why not do that at the soda event that we're going to go do, and didn't take it out of the bag, and we used Paul's Reliance end fed there. And yeah, but I realized I had a second actual working Reliance end bed. So yeah, it would have been not a big deal either way. But hey, you learned something too, man. You figured out what 11-07 in the 891 menu stands for. If you ever had run into it, thank God we had internet at the top of that mountain, because Paul's radio somehow, his 891, got into lower sideband mode on 20 meters. Couldn't figure out how to get it out of it. And we're like, what's going on? This makes no sense. Why is this radio that auto sets itself into upper sideband for the bands that require upper sideband want to be in lower sideband? But yeah, after watching the same video, literally I was like 4 seconds behind on the video that he was watching that was 4 seconds ahead. So I was like hearing, and I'm like, oh, I got to fast forward, and he'd fast forward. And so we were playing this game, trying to see who could get the answer first. So he ended up finally finding it. So I was like, okay, we just gave this random YouTuber a whole bunch of extra views.
But it was a helpful video. So
it was. Yeah, we should have starred and liked it for sure. I should have done that. I definitely bailed our keisters out of not being able to play radio. But yeah, outside of that, I think that whole weekend was awesome. That was my first soda event. First time I've ever done VHF, UHF as a soda event. I did maybe a park a long time ago on 5.2 and didn't have really good success at it. But yeah, it was really fun to be able actually take my HT out and use it. I don't know about you guys, but I don't. My HTs collect dust in the corner a lot of times. They're more trophies than they are actual usable a lot of times. So it was good to take it out and play with it. And
well, I was at the barn on Saturday. We go to one of our members has a barn, and on Saturday mornings, a bunch of us get together just to hang out, bring your own coffee, and just kind of shoot the shit about ham radio or whatever else you want to talk about. So we were talking about crossband repeat, because I said, I'd probably be able to get on the net more if I could crossband repeat my radio and use my HT. And I was asking, I go, how far will that work? Because I never had done crossband repeat. So I was thinking it would just work around the house. Maybe they're like, oh, you could go probably like a mile or two. I'm like, seriously? So now I'm like, all right, I'm all into this. So I'm going to hopefully set up my crossband repeat, and wherever I'm at, if I'm around the neighborhood or if I'm out for a walk, walking a dog or whatever, I can have my HT with me and still join the net, and I don't have to be actually in the shack. So I'm going to be working on that this week too.
Awesome.
So
cool.
I'll get some of my HTs in use.
Yeah, God forbid. You might have charged the batteries. I'm sure you probably haven't had them running for a while.
I only use them like once or twice a year. Field days and
Hamfest, if you're lucky.
And Hamfest, yeah.
Then you could look like two morons going, how the heck do we get this out of, offset? Whatever. That's bad. All right, well, let's get into the meat and potatoes of tonight's show. So again, I want to thank obviously Richard, Ben, you guys for coming on. We're super appreciative you guys got out of your busy schedule, come hang out with us and talk obviously ham radio, but more so Signal Stuff and HamStudy. You guys, I guess, are kind of pioneers a little bit in the ham radio world. I know when I first started, and I've been a ham way back when took a hiatus and came back in just right before COVID, and everyone was talking Signal Stuff. You got to get Signal Stuff. You got to get Signal Stuff. And everyone I go to, everyone I've talked to, and I know everyone here has, at least some Signal Stuff equipment. And so we love your antennas and the stuff you've been putting together. But more so, we've also been the beneficiaries of some really cool stuff that you guys have been pioneering. So, let's kind of, start there a little bit. Maybe Richard, you can kind of start there and explain, how you maybe, give us a little bit of your background for those folks that might not know you personally and don't know your ham story. And then you can throw it over to Ben a little bit, and then we could talk some Signal Stuff and HamStudy and kind of branch out from there.
My history, briefly, that can be tricky.
We all know. Yes.
So
doing
probably
hard
the
things
easiest,
makes you a better person.
easiest place to start is probably just to say that my grandfather, K7SG, who is still with us, got licensed in 1948, and he put up the first open ham radio repeater in Utah and the first Civil Air Patrol repeater in the nation. My father, who is now AC7DM, used to be WB7ESH, was licensed in 1976, and he upgraded to amateur extra just after I passed my technician license, which was about 25 years ago. Okay. So I relatively quickly over the next few years, upgraded to general and then amateur extra, using methods that many people in the community might criticize me for, because I wouldn't say that I learned things very well. I more just memorized, if that's the correct term, when you literally skim the question pool for 45 minutes before taking and passing the general exam, because you have exactly 3 hours left to take the test before you will have to retake your code your code exam again. And you might say that was like the first thing that got me started down the line of thinking about the thinking that eventually led to creating HamStudy. After that, I ended up writing a little PHP script to parse the question pool and convert it into an XML format, which I then made a little style sheet that could just display all of the questions in a nice readable format. Because I don't know if you've ever read the raw question pool document that they actually publish. It's published at ncvec.org. The question pool is not maintained by the FCC or by ARRL. It is maintained by the NCVEC and the question pool committee, though there are representatives from ARRL that are involved. And that document is just a Word document, and trying to read just the correct answer is really difficult because you have to read it and it's got like the question ID and then which answer it is in parentheses, and then you have to look at the answer and read that. So it's kind of a bit of mental gymnastics to try to do that efficiently. And I was very short on time the first time I attempted this, as you may have heard. And so that got me thinking, and I made this thing that just displayed everything in a, well, nice is maybe overstating it a little bit. I wasn't very good at web design at the time, but a readable page that just had the question, the answers, and the correct answer highlighted. And that was the first study tool that I ever built. I used that to get my extra. I did have to study for more than 45 minutes for that one. It was probably about 3.5 hours.
See, Todd, what's your problem?
You only studied for 3.5 hours?
We've been at it for 8 months. What's going on?
Hours, yes. So, not necessarily saying that this is the recommended way of doing it. And I've learned an awful lot since then. In fact, I think I can always pass the general now. I can probably do the extra about better than half the time. I'll pass it. But I'm not as well versed in some of the technical aspects as some others may be, which is sometimes a limitation and often doesn't really matter, to be honest. But anyway, so that kind of got me thinking. The way that we often study is not very efficient. And especially when I started all of this has changed somewhat, and I won't make any claims as to whether that's a result of my actions or not, because it's impossible to be sure. But at the time, the only thing that anybody did for studying was, let's just take practice exams over and over again. Yep. And taking practice exams for studying, I mean, it's effective. It does work. It's somewhat akin to choosing what you're going to study from your math textbook by setting it up and throwing darts. And whichever paragraph your darts hits, you're like, okay, let's look at that. Great, now let's start over again. We've actually done statistical analysis, and I don't have the numbers right in front of me, but Ben and I have both run this test. And on the extra exam, if I remember right, if you just on average, actually, maybe I have this.
Ben looks like he's looking for it.
Okay, let's go search. It's not been that long ago in Slack.
So while Ben's doing that, I got a couple questions. So when you got your extra, were you still under the code testing portion requirement or no?
Yes, when I got my extra, but not the 20 words a minute, only 5 words a minute.
Oh wow! So
yes, I know I have
that's
it.
right. So when did they lift that? Because like I remember when I got my ticket was like in 80s, and that's when the no code tech came out initially, and that had the no code requirement whatsoever. And I was like, dude, that's the only way I'm getting in the hobby. Code, I can't handle it. Just can't do. No matter how much I studied the material for the exam stuff, code just went right through my ear and out the other end, and never made any sense to me. So. Yeah, I applaud you for 3 hours, testing that short, but then, being able to master the code. You do CW a lot or no?
No, I still remember it. But when I passed the code requirement, I think I want to say 16. And I'm 41 now, so it's been a few years. Right. And they had already reduced, this was during the time of that there was the no code tech. So I got my no code tech. And then I passed my code, just the 5 words a minute code, but they had by this point dropped the requirement, and you only had to pass 5 words a minute to get all the way up to amateur extra. I don't remember exactly when that happened, but it has to have been, I think it was after I got my technician, because when I passed my technician, I had to pass the novice and the technician license exams. And then I passed the code, and then 11 months later, because you have 12 months after you pass that you can use that, after which you will have to take it again. It was 11 months later when, sort of in a panic, I realized, oh crap, I don't want to do that again. And I got my general. And so then when they dropped the code requirement entirely, would have had to be sometime in 2006 or 2007, I think. Because as I recall, I was in Russia from the end of 2005 to late 2007. And so, and the code requirement was there when I left, and it was not when I got back. And that's the only reason I remember that time range.
And you were rejoicing from the hills.
Well, I mean, I already had it, so it didn't matter to me. But it meant that I didn't have to build a code study tool, which is a very different problem than the ones that I was already trying to solve. But anyway, so I guess, Ben, did you find it?
No, we suffered from Slack's free data cleanup.
Yeah.
I found it. I typed the wrong search term and I put E2 2024, and that's the extra update.
Good job.
All right. So on the element 2 pool, we ran 50,000. 50,000 simulations, where each simulation it generated random practice tests. Didn't care if you got the answer right or wrong, just generated random practice tests until you had seen every question a single time. Wow. On average, the technician pool, in order to see every question once, anybody want to make a guess? How many times do you need to see, how many random practice tests do you need to see just to see every question a single time?
How many is in the pool?
396 questions, the largest section, and you'll have one section at random, or one question from each section at random. So the minimum number possible is 14, because the largest section has 14 questions in it. So it is statistically possible, not probable, but possible to do it in 14 practice tests. How many does it take on average?
I'm guessing close to 50.
Okay, Paul thinks this 50. Eric, what do you think?
I'm thinking like shorter, like 23, 25 maybe. So we'll go 25.
All right, Todd?
I'm going to say more. 100.
100. Todd's closest.
Wow.
So it is, the average is 76 times is the actual average. The median was 71, the mode is 70. So most common was 70. This is where you start realizing, oh, that's why they had to study those different things in stats. It never made sense before. But the minimum out of 50,000 times using a cryptographically secure random number generator, just the standard operating system one, the minimum number of times that we ever saw was 42. And the maximum we saw was 194.
Oh my,
so,
holy crap.
So just to see everything once, that's not to learn it. That's not to actually be sure that you got it right. That's just to see every question once. Wow. And the general is even worse, as you might expect. That was the average. Well, let's just go with the most common. The mode is 77 on the general pool. So anywhere from 46 was the minimum to 205 is the maximum. And on the extra, the most common was 78.
Whoa.
With a max of 237 and a minimum of 48. So if you're talking about using just straight practice exams as a study tool, you're going to be spending a lot of time. And I'm a software engineer, and I have been for a very, very long time. I'm not saying I was always a very good one, because when I was 7, I didn't know much. But I had already decided at that point I was a weird kid, let me tell you. So I always look to solve problems with software. And it's like, you know what? There's open question pools. There's no reason we can't do this better than this. And so I set out to start trying to improve things. First thing I did is I just made another practice test site. Mm-hmm. And then honestly, it may have been even partly just, it's like, well, we need to do something better than just what everybody is doing. Because it's like, it seems like there's a dozen different random practice test sites out there. And there's even more now. And so I started trying to figure out how to do it better. For a while, I experimented with what I called smart exams, which was where when it went to choose questions, it would always make sure to choose questions that you hadn't seen if it could. Mm-hmm. Which does mean that if you take 14 practice exams, you will see everything. Which seemed like a really good method until when we were using this on one of my father-in-law's classes. Did I mention that I eventually married the daughter of the man who I took all 4 of my exams from?
No.
Yeah, so
we'll circle back to that.
I have lots of connections to ham radio. Anyway, so he does these ham, one-day ham classes, and has for I don't know, 15 years, something like that. And so I started out I would test the new iterations of the software with his class. And there was one time that I was there to see how everybody was using it, see how it did. And when I realized that there was a lady there who was absolutely just on the edge of tears because she had taken 10 exams and she was not getting any better. Like, no progress, 10 different exams. I was like, well, yeah, you still haven't repeated a single question. Of course it's not any better. But that is psychologically harsh, you know?
That'll abuse you hard.
Yeah. Yeah. And that's where I
Where's
started
that
realizing
emotional
this is not
damage?
going to work.
Yeah, true.
Emotional.
Yeah. And people keep asking for that feature, by the way. I was like, yeah, no.
Emotional damage.
And that's kind of where the study mode was born, is out of those two conflicting things. And it's interesting, guys. I see a lot of people use it and they say, oh, this is clearly spaced repetition and it's working great. And it actually does bear a lot of resemblance to spaced repetition, but it's actually specifically designed to balance between what you might call emotional damage and boredom. So as you get things wrong, it's going to make things a little easier. As you get them right, it's going to make them a little bit harder. Because studies have shown that when you're trying to learn something, when you're studying, you need to stay engaged. And you only stay engaged if you're not bored, and you only stay engaged if you're not frustrated. You have to find that middle ground between those 2 points. And so our study mode is actually, kind of came about on that. But what a lot of people don't realize, especially over the last 4 years as our exam tools have become more prominent, is that exam tools actually came before HamStudy did. I think a lot of people think that we built exam tools because HamStudy was already pretty popular, and it was actually exactly the opposite. I initially built exam tools for for my father-in-law in B7V's test sessions, so we could do all of the paperwork more efficiently. We've had, until everything kind of changed with COVID, our test session, our testing group was one of the most active in the nation. It was the #1 most active W5YI VEC group in the nation, with anywhere from 50 to 150 applicants most months, which is a lot. And we usually had anywhere from 5 to 8 volunteer examiners doing it.
Now, did you find like there were any like statistics? Did you track any statistics in terms of like whether or not like the success rate was getting better as you enhanced the tool, and in terms of people passing? Or
I've never tried pulling that kind of information. I'm not sure. It's possible I still have the data that I could, but the trouble with anything like that, and I've tried doing a lot of statistical analysis from the various types of data that I have to see if we can, even things like how can we find a more efficient path for studying, or like things that is statistically, if you study these questions, going to help more, things like that. I think the problem is that there's too much that we don't know about any given applicant, because I only know the data of when they started studying. I don't know what they knew before that point. I once actually tried pulling somebody's test, like I pulled and aggregated test history from thousands of users, or their study history of everything that they had seen, like how many times they'd seen each question. And I even just tried to say, can we do a statistic and say, okay, if you've seen it 10 times, and this is how many times you got it right, or at least, or even this is how many times, like you got it right, then wrong, then right, the pattern of how you did. Can I find any kind of a statistical correlation between how much you need to have seen it and whether or not you get the question right the next time you've seen it? And I could not find any statistically significant correlation there. I even tried using a deep neural network and training an artificial intelligence, a very simple one, but I tried training an artificial intelligence to try to predict just whether you would answer a question right or not based on the rest of your history with the question pool. Now, it's possible, knowing more about it now than I did then, and I could possibly do a text embedding and try to give it some more context on the questions, things like that. Maybe there's more that could be determined. But what I've essentially figured out with all of that is that it's basically a bad idea to try to draw that kind of conclusion, just because everybody's individual history and background knowledge, which we can't know anything about, is different enough that it's better to start with the assumption that they know nothing and then learn quickly based on what they give us.
Well, when Elon finally implements the chip in the arm, then, that's when you probably want to start doing the AI analysis.
Not allowed to say what the shoulder surgery was for.
True that.
Sorry.
You're testing out a new tech.
Yeah, so that was interesting. But yeah, so we actually originally created ExamTools just for administering the exams. And then it was like, well, I've got a tool for administering the exams. May as well make one for studying the exams. And it kind of grew from there. So, it's interesting, all of my business cards and everything at this point, anytime I make marketing materials, especially like for a show, I have to put 3 different brands on it because otherwise it's incomplete. That really complicates graphics design, I'll tell you. In fact, if you look at our shirts, I don't know how well you can see them, probably not well, especially on mine. On Ben's shirt, you can see that there's 2 logos on the one side and then the green logo on the other side. Yeah, even our shirts, we have 3 logos on it because Signal Stuff is kind of the umbrella that we've set up, but ExamTools is its own thing that does a lot of good that is in many ways unrelated to either two, and so is HamStudy. So it's been an interesting balancing act over the years because all 3 of these things have their own unique and kind of fascinating history, but they all grew together.
Well, let's give you a little breather there. We'll give you a little breather there because that was awesome background story. I'm pretty psyched. I've got a ton of questions.
Going off on tangents.
But well, then you're in good company here. So let's give Ben the floor there a little bit. So obviously it sounds like, Ben, you were dragged in a little bit, to this whole ham radio hobby. So, kick off a little bit of your background. Let us know how you got into this whole process and, give us some of the skinny, as they say.
Yeah, you're not wrong. So I first met Richard back in 8th grade. So this was
we're going way back.
I don't even know, a long time ago. So if I'm 42 and I was 40, then that was almost 30 years ago, 28 years ago. So I've known this guy for a long time, and
it was a righteous dude.
It was hate at first sight. We did not get along very well that first year of knowing each other. Just our personalities, we both had various quirks that we weren't prepared to deal with. Took about a year, and then in 9th grade, we kind of got over that and became friends. And that was about the time that he was studying to get his technician license. And so Richard, I like to say that he was nagging me to get my own license ever since then, because we were part of a group of 4 guys who would help out the librarians at the school run the bell system, run the computer labs and so forth. We've always been very tech savvy, tech interested. And we'd be in these computer labs and he would be talking about the stuff that he's studying. He'd be showing us his books and saying, hey, you can borrow this book, and really trying to evangelize the hobby that he's already told you how he was connected to. And I was like, okay, maybe. I didn't really have any interest.
The other 2 got licensed.
I know, so I felt a lot of pressure because they all 3 did, and I'm the last, the black sheep of the group. Didn't work until eventually it was 2010. So I was almost 30 years old. So I've known him for 30 years. I was almost 30 years old when I finally did get licensed, and that was using HamStudy for studying. And I'd known him, having known him for such a long time. When I talk to people about how I work with Richard now, I like to describe what's happened to him as he kind of accidentally built himself 3 side businesses, because he's already shared with you how the HamStudy and ExamTools just kind of materialized out of his own desire to make his life, or his not at the time father-in-law's life, simpler. And then a little bit about Signal Stuff, which Richard can go into more later. He used to be part of a local Explorer Post group, and they would make these antennas for fundraisers, essentially. And then the group dissolved, but people still wanted the antennas. And he's like, well, okay, I still know how to make these antennas, so I can make and sell these things. So the demand was always there. So he didn't set out I'm going to build an antenna business and sell antennas so that I can keep doing these other things. They just kind of happened because he was in the right place at the right time. People wanted it, and knew how to do it.
There's no exit strategy.
Did I even talk about the antennas all that often?
Not yet. We're getting there.
Often enough. I mean, I knew about it then. So that's how I like to describe Richard's kind of success there, is accidentally building 3 businesses. I've helped him throughout the years in various aspects because we've known each other and we've worked together a number of times. We've worked together at least 3 different companies, and also consulting gigs on the side before. Like it's been more like four, maybe even 5. Then there was the time that we also did a little consulting thing with another friend. So if you count that one, then there's probably 5. So we've worked together a lot. And so when he'd be working on something, he'd be talking about it, and that would inevitably turn into, well, what kind of help can I provide? And so I would help him with some things here and there, but never really full time or as an ongoing thing. It would be a little bit here, a little bit there, but always kind of part of it. When I eventually got my license back in 2010, I haven't really done a lot with it. I feel sometimes like I'm the hamposter. I don't really like. I've got a license. I even got my general earlier this year, but I don't do a lot with it. What I have done, what I have enjoyed, and what I found that is the kind of thing that probably would be the thing to get me more involved in it is volunteering and net control. The first experience that I really had with ham radio was helping to run communications at a local half marathon that goes down the canyon. And so we've got ham radio operators at different parts. We have to have a repeater up in where it forks off. And it's kind of this elaborate thing where you've got net control at the bottom, and you've got somebody else at this junction point doing the repeaters. And that was a lot of fun. I'd never really had an experience there. And he's like, hey, come do this. He'd talked to me about it for years because he's been doing this thing ever since I can remember. So there's a few different races that Richard just always helps out with. And he'd constantly talk about it and say, hey, can you come help? Hey, can you come help? Hey, you should do this. Eventually I said, okay. And I had a really good time.
Was it okay or fine?
Exactly. That's really what it was. Like, maybe this will get him off of my back. Didn't work. He's still on my back. But that I really enjoyed. And then later on, when I eventually started running myself, that was the first half marathon that I wanted to do because I felt this connection to the community just because of what I'd done there. And when I think about the things that I like doing with ham radio, it's those kind of things. It's community events. It's things related to runs or groups or fitness or things like that. So like POTA and SOTA, those sound rather interesting to me because I like to go and be out on the trails. And so great. Well, maybe if I take a radio with me, I can turn that into something. We'll see. But that's kind of my story with ham radio.
So, all right. So Ben, because Richard's the chief programmer and idea guy, right? And that's kind of his role in the 3 companies. Where do you find your little niche in the companies, and how do you lend your help in that way?
Richard, what was it that you came up with for me? Isn't like chief of getting Richard to not lose track of things or something like that?
So in that last blog post, let's see.
He's like a patron of lost items or something like that.
Effectively.
Development, and on the list of employees that I listed on our announcing the Black Friday sale post, I put Richard Bateman, KD7 BBC, all of the things, Ben Leverage, KF7 KGR, development, and keeping Richard on task. And then there's David and Jessica.
Right. So
I'm also
shipping and support.
Yeah. So I'm also a software developer like Richard. We each have our own expertise. He's generally more strong in the back areas, the databases, all the algorithms. And I generally will do more of the front end pieces. I also do the back end pieces. We both do all the things. But typically, if we're talking about efficiency, we're going to put me on some kind of a user-facing problem and Richard on some kind of data and algorithm problem. So we really complement each other a lot in that regard. I also try and push him on things that he doesn't really like to do, like marketing or design work or
podcasts.
Coming on podcasts.
Podcast, yeah, that's the other one. Well, we appreciate you coming on. So.
He actually, when you reached out to us on Discord recently, he sidebar commented to me and said, Ben, take care of getting this scheduled and just let me know what we need to do because I won't take care of it myself, but I know that you will. So it really is just kind of keeping Richard on track of all the things, keeping focus on the things that are not just the day-to-day minute, very detailed things that he enjoys, but are still good and important and valuable.
Ben is a much better project manager than I am. I'm good at solving problems. I'm good at brainstorming, good at coming up with solutions and things like that. But I'm not always great at staying organized and keeping on top of everything. And at this point, there are so many different things that we're trying to get. I mean, I think we've got a page somewhere, a Google Doc that I wrote up when Ben first, started working, started actually working with me, of like, here's all of the initiatives that we're currently working on. And it's like a page and a half long. And those are all things that I have at least been started and are not completed. And so Ben's been kind of, some of the time I'm just keeping putting all the little fires out and keeping, maintenance and making sure everything stays running. I mean, we've got a Kubernetes cluster of servers that we run. Wow. We've got, the 3 websites, all of the shipping, all of the manufacturing, managing all of the logistics of making sure that we get, speaking of which, I have 40 kilograms of nitinol that was misdelivered that I need to go pick up tonight. Anyway, all of that stuff that I'm keeping track of. So some of the time it's just, I need to keep doing these things so all of the stuff keeps going. Ben, here's our next priority. Please go make progress on that.
Yeah,
I think it's awesome that you guys have found success because of the dynamic that you have, right? Because there are other companies that have tried to do something similar to what you guys are doing with nowhere near the success, and I think it's because they lack the skills and abilities that you guys have, and the ability to work together and really be a really good team. I use all of your products. I love ExamTools, and I think ExamTools is the greatest thing since sliced bread. So I was very shocked to hear you say that was what came first. Like I went through in February of 21 is when I got my technician, and so the end of 2020, I was doing the ham radio prep, and I didn't fully like learn the material. It just didn't sink. And so when I found HamStudy, I was like, oh, well, this makes sense because now it's tracking, my proficiency with these questions, and it's giving me the questions that I get wrong, and and it's coming back and going through them, and then the way that you've got it set up is just fantastic.
Oh, thanks.
But it works well for you. So on a somewhat related note, one criticism that has often been legitimately leveled at HamStudy is that it does unintentionally somewhat encourage people to go a memorization route.
An application that encourages people? What's wrong with society today?
Well, but I mean, I'm a software engineer, not an author, not a writer. And so I started out by playing to my strengths and let's take what we have and get the most out of it. But that does mean that even with the user submitted explanations, like we were looking at earlier, going through the extra questions, it's kind of disjointed. It's not a coherent, let's walk you through and teach you everything. So one project that we've been working on recently that we haven't really pushed it much. We haven't told a lot of people about it, but we did mention it in some of our recent blog posts around the Black Friday sale. But we have started looking into doing some content, some actual instructional materials. Currently, we have just one, and I don't know if I'm going to take that further on ours or if we're just going to partner with some other people. We already do have something in the works. And hopefully we'll be doing some future integrations, especially with the mobile app. But right now, if you go to hambook.org, HAMBOOK.org, you'll find the first version of the HamStudy Technician Class Handbook, which has been a really interesting project that I accidentally made over the course of a couple weeks, a month or two ago, when I should have been working on something else. Because I decided to start an experiment that I really didn't think would work, and it worked way better than I expected it to, and I just sort of kept running with it until I actually had it turned into something usable.
Very cool.
And so I actually wrote this.
No, go ahead. Go ahead. I
actually wrote this using AI chat tools. It was not mostly ChatGPT. It was mostly some other ones, but basically I started with a layout. And then I had it start doing the writing, and you have to really monitor. It came up with some really interesting, very plausible sounding total BS. But when I stayed on top of it and, made manual edits and stuff, I was actually surprised at how well I was able to first come up with kind of a rough draft of the book, then go back through looking at the questions to add the missing information. And I feel like it's actually come together pretty well, as my goal has been to create something that could, and it's a free resource. It's actually an open source book. We'll have something more integrated with software at a future time, which will probably be something that you'll have to pay for. I try to always have something where we need to support ourselves and support our software. If it's not self-supporting, we can't keep it going. But I also want to make sure that there's at least some version that is accessible, regardless of your means in life. Because I'm trying to build the hobby, not just build my pocketbook. Although, if I can do both at the same time, I'm not going to complain. So we're trying to, there's a lot of resources out there, but especially most of the free ones currently are more based around just the questions, which is great if you already have enough background. But if you don't know anything, if you're really a beginner, you need something that's more coherent and more based on, going over materials that then also links back to the questions to let you, so you can be quizzed on it. One of the most effective ways of learning is to be taught something and then quizzed on what you were just taught. And I feel that that's the most effective way to use the question pool for studying, is to combine those two, which is one reason in the current version of the HamStudy app that you can actually organize everything by one of, I think, 4 or 5 different books, including the ARL books, Gordon West, Ham Radio School. We've got no nonsense guides on there now, and Fast Track, I think, are the ones we currently support.
Yep.
It's definitely good to hear something like that, because in essence, like my daughter, who is no electronics, no prior background in anything radio, surprised me one time with getting her ham ticket, but she coupled it with using a weekend, we'll call crash course. There's a club in the area that does a weekend crash course, and then they do testing at the end. She was using HamStudy to supplement that testing in between while they were going through that stuff, and she was like, "Oh, that makes more sense now." And so I think, obviously, and one of the things we kind of did in our episode was, and you obviously witnessed it, was that a lot of our listeners are like, well, hey, why don't you read the background, the contributed content that kind of says, this is why the answer is this. And once we started reading it, we're like, oh, well, that's just starting to reinforce a lot of that stuff. And we've seen a lot of feedback from that, from folks saying, oh, yeah, I like that part because I get to learn something.
And that's the goal of that. And I think it does a pretty good job. So we're kind of trying to bridge that other gap from the other side. It's, when you're in the questions, you need something that's focused around the questions. But if you're just learning to start with, my theory, at least, and it's hard for me to, I'm too far into it to be able to say this from my own experience, but based on what I'm seeing from other people learning, is that it seems like this is something that will help more when people are getting started. So, check out handbook.org and send me some feedback if anybody has any. I'd love to see it used as a resource for you guys. The web version will always be free. I'll probably eventually sell at least like an ebook version and or a PDF version, things to try to support the projects ongoing. But
we'll definitely link
at
in
least
the show
that
notes
technician version is always going to be free on the web.
Very cool. We'll put it in the show notes so that way everybody can get access to that and reference it. So cool.
I just want to say, so I've been using HamStudy for my extra, obviously, and the way I do it, and I from the general to this, the app has been updated, and it's gotten way better. Like, I love it so much more now, and I've mentioned it on this podcast probably numerous times. But what I love about it is, one, you have if you don't know, you can get an explanation of or why you got it wrong right there. You don't have to go anywhere. You click it, pops up. But I love the way you can organize it and study whatever section you want. So how I've done it is, I did one, studied it till I got like 80-90%. Then I'd study 2, and then I'd go to 1, 2. Then I'd study 1, 2, make sure I was staying up at that 80. Then I'd go to 3, and so forth. 5 was a tough one. That's a tough section. I've been on it for a while. Yeah, but and again, I'm like someone like Eric's daughter. I don't know anything from when I took my technician, I knew green was ground, and that was it. I had no idea what. And I was going through the. I'm like, what are they talking about? Like, this is insane. Like, I've never even heard. It was like learning Chinese. I was like, I don't even know what this is. I'd go to these barn meetups and meet with the guys, and they'd all be. My wife would be like, "So, how was the barn?" I'm like, I don't know. The guys were talking a bunch of stuff. I had no idea what they're talking about, but they're pretty smart. I can tell you that. But as I've gotten into the hobby and start learning, now I can actually join into some of the conversations. But what your app has done is I started off before I even started my extra. I just took the test just to see what I'd be at, ground level. And then I've been doing this, and then I think I got like the 4, and I took the test again, and like, I didn't do too much better. I mean, I knew a couple more questions than I did maybe the first one, but I only had 4 out of the 10, 11, how many said 10 of them?
10.
So yeah, so I mean, I wasn't even halfway done. But like you said, it keeps you engaged. And I look at studying, I've always been a bad test taker. I don't know why. I'm more of like, I have to do something to learn it. Like, you can tell me till you're blue in the head. Like, I need to actually physically do it, and then I'll be able to understand and learn it. So I look at like studying for my extra as like going to the gym. It's like, you hate going to the gym. You need a lot of motivation to get there. But once you get there, you feel good, and you want to, and you finish out your workout or whatever. It's kind of like that. It's like, I got to get on it. So, but I'm like, oh, I'll just do it later. I'll do it. You keep putting it off. But then once I get on it, I get stuck on it, and I can't let it go, because it's almost like a game to me. Like, oh, I got to get this question again. Oh, I got to get this one right. And it shows you now like how many you've gotten wrong. I'm like, why do I keep getting this one wrong? But it's a smart app, because it'll know, like, it'll keep throwing the ones I get. You'll see that one more until you start getting it right. And it's really been helpful. And then I think, what we do with this something extra, as we try to do it for fun and stuff, but I'll go back to studying, and I'm like, oh yeah, that was one of the ones I got wrong on the thing, and I'll remember it. So, I mean, kudos to you guys. I mean, the app for me has been a lifesaver. I never thought I'd get past technician until I met Eric. And I never thought I'd even think about studying for extra. And honestly, I'm actually learning some of this stuff. I'm starting to understand some of it, not all of it, but some of it. And at least I have a general knowledge now of what I'm actually doing. And I think it really comes down to your app and the way it's set up. And I couldn't be happier with it. And I tell everyone, all new hams, I said, listen, you got to go to HamStudy. I'm like, I'm telling you, like, if anyone can, if I can get, passing questions on an extra exam, anyone can. So you should definitely try it out. And I'm hoping to get my extra sooner than later. Like I said, 5 put me in a stump, and I just started 6, so we'll see. But now when I go back, so I studied so much on 5, I forgot to go back to do 1 through 4, study them all. So I was a little bit shady, but I did it for a couple of days and got caught back up to it. But it works really well, and it definitely keeps you engaged. At least it keeps me engaged. Like, once I get on it, I find myself on it longer and longer. And then I take a break, and I've talked about it. Like, I have these trainings we have to do every year and at work, and I've been through them. I've been doing my job for it's my 22nd year, so I've been through it 20 times already. So I just sit there with my phone, and I just, for 2.5 hours, 3 hours, I'm just studying. I'm going through your app like it's no tomorrow.
He works in the government, so you a tax dollar at work.
Yeah,
So one thing you could try to just, it's along the same lines of what you're talking about. When I think he was 12 at the time. My 12-year-old was studying for his technician earlier this year. He's 13 now. But he would go through and study. So he was studying the tag. So he'd study T1 until he got about 80% on the aptitude. And then he, instead of changing it to T2, he would add T2. And so it's going to initially just ask you the T2 ones. But if it gets to where it sees anything as being, anyway, it can pick things still from T1 once you've seen the T2 things enough where it figures that you know them as well or better than the other ones, and it needs to go find a harder question. And so that way it kind of builds in some review as you get to the end of, getting closer to getting that next section up to an 80% aptitude or so. just a thought is, so
Yeah,
instead
no,
of changing and then adding them back in, if you just add the new ones, you'll still actually, it'll walk you through and do that progression kind of automatically.
I'll try it that way, because what I like to do is see all the questions once, and then I start like really going through it. But maybe what I'll do is, once I've seen 100% of the questions, maybe I'll just go and add them all to it and do all of them to keep me fresh on everything. But that's a good idea. I didn't know it worked that way, but like I said, it's been working for me, and I'm surprised that I see these questions and I know the answers. I mean, and you guys have probably seen it, like even from the beginning when we started doing this to now, like I'm getting more and more right than I used to get more wrong if I'd get any right. But now it's like I actually know them. And then I've seen them so many times, I've even read the if I get it wrong like more than once, I gotta go read and say, why the hell am I, what, maybe this will help me understand it better. So it doesn't, it's not just memorization. The program also allows you to learn while you're trying to work the questions and pass the test. So all in all, I'm a big fan. I support you guys 100%, and I pass the word around, especially to new guys that I want to upgrade. I say, you got to go with this, and everyone will have like, oh, I use this, I use that. I'm like, I'm telling you, HamStudy, it's all you need, and you should be good to go. So we'll see how that goes. But I'm going to try it your way and see what happens. See if I stay more refreshed on the older versions.
If you think about it, shoot me an email. Let me know how it went.
Yeah, I definitely will.
Feedback like this is actually really valuable to us, because it helps us when we go to look at doing new features. If we have some feedback on how people are using the current ones, helps us to decide, okay, is this really something we should spend time on, or et cetera.
Yeah, and I like the little thing on the right that shows you how many times you've taken like wrong, how many right, or if you got it right and then wrong, right, like that. Like, don't use my data part of your study, because it's going to be way off. You're going to be like, what is this guy, an idiot? But
we'll use your data for your studying.
Yeah, just I'm the exception to the rule. I'm the outlier, right? Is that what they say in statistics? But one of the things that I find, like at least with the test questions, is like sometimes it's like one word or reactance versus resistance, and that's like the only difference. And like I get confused. And what your app does is it knows that I'm getting those confused, and it starts pushing those things at me until I get it down. I mean, literally, like, I'll do it and it'll start throwing it at me like every other question. It'll pop up again until I start getting consistent with, and it's really helped me, get the concept down.
There is one particular question in the extra pool that I wish they would poll. That is the four possible answers are so similar that I have literally had at least a dozen people email me telling me that the question is wrong because all the answers are the same, or at least because two of the answers are the same. And it's because there's two different words. There's one that changes in the first question, in the first half, one that changes in the second half, and two of the answers have and each so each two, it's like the first two it's A, the second two this one, and the second one is A and B, and the second, and then they alternate on the other ones or something like that. And so people will notice one of the changes, but not the other one. And then they'll think, they'll look at the other ones and think that they're the same. And it's kind of hilarious, especially because some of these people are emailing me expecting me to be able to change it. It's like, so, I just posted what's there. It's like, I don't have any control over what's in the question pool.
We're with you on that one, Richard. And, we always say,
ain't nobody got time for that.
We definitely ain't got time for that. So it's simple as that, But so I kind of want to segue here a little bit, because I know we haven't really touched a little bit on ExamTools, and you had said ExamTools was way before kind of HamStudy kind of came on the scene. How did you guys when did it take off? Obviously you're doing it locally for your family and your father-in-law and stuff like that, and all of that process. When did it did COVID be the marker point that took off for ExamTools, or? And how did you adjust to that? I mean, because you guys did phenomenal in my view, because all of a sudden I'm hearing, oh yeah, ExamTools is the thing to go to. You got to do ExamTools. Everyone's like, don't go anywhere else, go ExamTools. And then when talking with Paul, he's our VE guy. for our local area, and he's like, ExamTools. I'm like, fine, ExamTools. Let's go to ExamTools. And once he showed us the process, I was like, dude, why are our current VEs doing this paper process? I just want to slap him upside the head. And so he showed him the light. But anyway, so dive into that a little bit.
So that right there, that's exactly the problem that I ran into. So ExamTools went through a few different versions, but the version that is at least still at the core mostly the same in the current version of ExamTools, I actually released in 2014. And we had been using it for years. Then a few years later, so Ben and I have both worked in the past, and I'm still working there part-time for a company called GradeCam, which builds software used by educators. It's kind of a bubble sheet type of a thing where you can print out the bubble sheet and grade it with a webcam. And that's one of the I added support for that in ExamTools in, I want to say probably 2018, 2016, I don't know, sometime a while ago at this point. The idea being that a lot of people were really resistant to the idea of doing computerized testing, and tablets weren't as ubiquitous then, and so we don't have the money for laptops and stuff. So it's like, okay, well, fine, you don't have to do that. You can just use this, and you can still get all these benefits. You can have totally unique exams. We can collect statistics on how people are doing, and I had all of that, and I went to Hamvention in 2018 and 2019 and walked around and tried to talk to people and tried to get people interested. And there were, I think, 3 or 4 other test sessions who started using it. And there were a few Laurel sessions who were using just the GradeCam stuff. But there might have been a dozen test sessions all told that were using ExamTools when COVID hit in 2020 and everything sort of went nuts. And I try to stay active in enough different social media groups and stuff. I don't really do Instagram and stuff because I'm not really a visual person. I don't take photos. I don't do video. I'm just really bad at those things. These are some of the things that Ben's working on, actually, or he's working on, but he has to
They're
get
on my list.
through me
If
to
not
do that. But I am on Reddit, and I'm in a bunch of Discord channels, and I try to at least be available so that people can talk to me and so that I can get some feedback, and I'll pop on and try to get some, kind of crowdsource ideas when I'm looking for things to change. So I had enough of a presence that when people started going nuts about, hey, we've got to find a way to do remote exams, it didn't take long for me to get dragged into that group. And I was not really enthusiastic, to be honest. I was like, to be honest, I didn't think it was going to last as long as it did. I was like, you know what, it'll be a month or two. Everything will open up again. We don't need to solve this problem right now. But I also knew more about it than most people did because I had been talking to VECs, and W5YI had been very supportive. And I had contact with the board members on GLARG, and had not at that point talked to ARRL much. But I knew enough about it that I was aware that there were no laws that would keep us from doing remote exams. I knew what the requirements were. And so as I kind of got dragged in kicking and screaming, it didn't take me long to realize that a lot of the things that were being, that people were focusing on, were not the things that were actually the problem. In fact, most of the things that they were most concerned about were things that I had solved in my software already like 10 years ago. It was like, guys, no, we can do that. That's not a problem. We need to figure out this paperwork stuff. We need to figure out the process. How do we do this to make sure that people aren't cheating? How do we, how big of a problem are all of these other things? And so we did some brainstorming, and at some point, I don't remember when, we started on, I don't remember, it's like Campfire or some project management tool that's something like Campfire, something that I'd seen before, but I hadn't used much, and I haven't used since. So I don't remember what it's called. And then at some point, I moved it over to a Discord server, which is where it's ended up being. And I sort of accidentally took over the control of the group. I never intended to do that. It just sort of happened. I'm not even sure when exactly, to be honest. And so then on March 26th, 2020, I gave what is, as far as I can tell, the first fully remote exam in the United States, just using ExamTools as it had been, and Zoom. And then we did all the paperwork using Adobe Sign. And that was those were the biggest problems at the time, is that, I had the system that could do all these things. It could do the testing, it could generate the paperwork, it could collect things, but it couldn't print CSCEs because up till that point, none of the VECs would let me do it. It didn't have support for digital signatures, partly, again, because none of the VECs were willing to allow it at the time. And I had written it all to be used in person. And so when you did the passwords, there was just one password for a session that was assigned by the team lead at the beginning of the session. And then all the VEs would know what that was. And they would just go in, and when they started and stopped exams and stuff, they would have to do it on the applicant's computer. Well, now that we're doing remote, that meant we had to use Zoom to take over the computer in order to do that, which added a whole bunch of work. And you'll if you look in the right places, you'll see that era referred to as tier 1, because that was kind of like the tier 1 of what we're doing is this, and this works, and we can do things, and we can make this, we can get administering exams, but it's not ideal. And so as soon as we had that going, then I started going just crazy hours, because I still had a full-time job at this point. It was before I dropped part-time at GradeCam, and I was working nights and weekends. And did I mention that my youngest daughter was born in February of 2020? My poor wife, who has been licensed longer than I have, so at least she understands. But yes, anyway. So the main thing was I had to build a new interface, and that's when I built basically the whole interface when you sign into ExamTools. All of that had to be rebuilt during this portion, because it needed to be built with an emphasis on remote control, so you can allow people in and remotely start and stop and grade exams and such, and digital signatures, so that all of that could be done in band with all of that. And so, so the core of the system was already there. The ability to generate the exams, the ability to grade the exams, and just kind of the whole structure already existed. But we did have to overhaul it to make it more efficient for actually doing remote exams. And once people saw that and they wanted to do remote exams, that was the easiest tool available. And so they would use that for remote exams. Then they started looking at it and realizing, oh, hey, well, when we go back and do paper exams, this is so much easier for that as well. So now people are finally starting to use it for the thing that I built it to do almost a decade earlier, but nobody was interested in, because until they see a reason, until they see something that's compelling enough to change what they're doing, it's human nature. Ain't nobody got time for that. I need to, why should I change? But there have been a lot of really interesting benefits. I think one of the most underappreciated ones, especially for to people who are hesitant about changing and trying out ExamTools, is just, if you've noticed, the last couple of question pool changes have been a little bit more comprehensive than in previous years before that. And that is at least in part because for the last couple, the question pool committee has come to me and said, hey, can we get the statistics? And I've given them anonymized statistics for every question in the question pool that says, this is how many times it was seen, this is how many times each of the distractors was chosen. Nice. And then you can see how many times it was answered correctly, how many times it was answered incorrectly. You can look for statistical anomalies, so which things were missed more than they should
pioneer. You're a pioneer of this, man. Like, just the fact that, you have forced them to get away from these ridiculous, stupid questions to getting something more modern. Awesome. I appreciate that.
I mean, it's just a question of let's make use of what we've got. And I was in the right place at the right time. Yep. But it was a little frustrating waiting for that point to finally hit, because I had everything ready and just couldn't get people interested at that point.
Perfect storm. Yeah, that's awesome. So cool. Okay. Well, so Ben, you got anything to add into? I mean, were you brought in at that same time, or you after kind of all of that?
I was kind of more of a before than I was an after. So I'd helped Richard with ExamTools a bit in the past. And the last time I'd really helped him, I think, on ExamTools before that was one of the first attempts at working on, is it the 509? Anyway, there's a PDF that you have to fill out where there was okay. Yeah. And so there was this whole system where we had to go and interact with the FCC to look up things based off of the FRM and then populate it into this PDF. And that was when we were first figuring out how to build PDFs ourselves. And that was years ago. I think that was probably more like the 10 years ago that he was talking about. But that was kind
guessing
of the last time
2010,
I'd really been.
2011 when you did that. Yeah.
So that was kind of my last engagement with ExamTools before much this year.
Okay. And so with ExamTools right now, I mean, obviously it's become very popularized for sure. I mean, every club that I know that wants to get away from the paperwork, the process of, 3-4 hours of scanning and all the other garbage that goes with it. Coupled with that also, I know, Paul, you made mention when we were going through that whole evaluation and moved towards that as our own club, that you guys have kind of coupled or partnered with ARL in that process, or so kind of touch on that a little bit. So is that going to become the default tool, or is it going to just be what's that kind of look like?
That's something that kind of, I'm not totally sure the answer to that, to be honest. It seems to vary a little bit from day to day. ARL is a huge, it's a huge entity. And there are people at ARL who I think are very excited about ExamTools, who really like it and would really like to see it used, especially because it saves them a lot of time if it's used properly. They've set it up so that they can import the files that are exported for submitting it to ARL include everything that they need to import it directly into their system, so they don't have to retype everything. When you mail the documents in, they have to have people actually go through and type everything into their system, which opens up the possibility of typos. It takes longer. I mean, even if they're fast, it's still going to take longer than if they're just importing a file. At the same time, ARL is as an entity, is very aware of the fact that they've been around since the dawn of time, or maybe a few years before that. And the rest of us mere mortals may disappear one day, and the tools may not be available after that. And so I have had a couple of conversations along those lines with some of the people at ARL who I think are maybe less enthusiastic about it, and mentioned the possibility of partnering with them more directly and making sure that there's some provisions in place so that if we do shut down unexpectedly, we can at least give them a way to keep the system running, or maybe hand it over to them or something like that. So I've at least left the door open for figuring some of that out. But especially with their issue with the data breach earlier this year, which was a whole nightmare from everything I can hear, and they weren't allowed to say anything about it. And I think they haven't had time to come back to any of that. And so I don't have anything definite, but there's definitely seems to be a lot of interest there, and there's definitely interest on our part. One of the things that we're still working on finalizing overall is that it's in everybody's best interest if the system is at least to some extent self-supporting, and figuring out how that happens, where ideally there's just some small portion of the exam fees can come back into the system in order to help support and pay for everything, to make sure that the system is not entirely supported by antenna sales, although that's largely what's happening right now. Right now, that's purely on a voluntary basis for most sessions, although there are a few VECs. I think I can say it's Glarg, Anchorage, and W5YI have all actually set up something somewhat formal with me to make sure that there's some kind of contribution coming back to help support that. So we've been kind of slowly moving in that direction, but my priority has been more in enabling things and making sure that we're able to move forward with kind of the understanding that everybody wants to make sure that this system is able to continue. And I'm not trying to gouge anyone, and so we'll be able to figure things out as far as a more efficient way. You're not looking to be the next
Microsoft and own Windows, your own version of
no.
So actually, maybe you can kind of elaborate on it. Elaborate on it a little bit, just in terms of because a lot of people may not know that ExamTools itself, and correct me if I'm wrong, it's a free platform available to clubs and VEs in general to be able to use, as well as, but most of your, even HamStudy in some realm, maybe touch upon that, and then what helps support that system, and we can then direct into Signal Stuff, because I think that's something we definitely want to touch on before we kind of close out.
Yeah, so ExamTools, I have not put any mandatory fees of any kind in place with ExamTools. What I have done is I've requested that if you have the ability to contribute, that you contribute in whatever way that you're able to do. So if that contribution is by helping to update the documentation, which is hosted on GitHub and is open source and could use some help, that would be great. If your contribution is by doing extra aggressive testing, that's fine. If you're actually collecting testing fees and there are fees available and you can send $1 or $2 per applicant or something, that would be fantastic. That helps a lot. And a lot of teams are doing that, just voluntarily sending. It's usually anywhere from 50 cents to $2 per applicant is kind of the range that I'm seeing. And I do absolutely encourage that because, like I said, having the system to be getting the system to where it's self-supporting is in everybody's best interest. The more that's happening, the better we're able to support and continue to improve things and add features and add the things that people are requesting long term. But currently, both that and HamStudy, even though HamStudy does have the mobile app does not make nearly enough money to support Ben's or my salaries. I mean, especially if you were to look at what we'd be making at a different company. I mean, I essentially took a pay cut when I dropped to half time to spend the other half of my time working here. But the fact that I can even do it is a testament to how Signal Stuff is doing, which continues to absolutely blow my mind every day, honestly. I mean, we started out doing this thing as a fundraiser, making these out of my garage, and we have sold, if I remember correctly, I think we're over 23,000 Signal sticks so far this year, which is insane. I mean, when you think about what they are and where they came from, and that I didn't set out to build an antenna company, and so we've just been trying to continually improve that. But I have also been trying not to spend more time than we have to there. Although most of Ben's and my time over the last probably 3 months at this point, once we got the mobile app, we switched gears fully to the new Signal Stuff website, because the old one was getting really, really bad. It was a WordPress site, and it was getting to where it was so bad we were having 5 or 6 people per day would email me saying, hey, I went to try to check out and I couldn't because it timed out because it was getting that slow. So this whole new website, it's fairly custom. It's built on an e-commerce, kind of a headless e-commerce backend with a bunch of custom plugins. But I think this new site's turned out really, really nicely. In fact, you got there, go ahead and go to products real quick at the top.
Sorry, I'm watching a different one.
And you can see, you can select your radio brand. Say, hey, this is the radio I have. And then search, and it'll filter it down to show you exactly what you've got. And this is flexible enough that I can do some of that.
Oh, very cool. This is actually pretty impressive, because this is one of my, when I started looking into this, and I know Paul's got it, and he kind of showed me like, oh, dude, you just need to get this SMA connector, blah, blah, blah. And I'm like, so when I went up to the original site, I was like, well, okay, where do I have to go? It's like, it wasn't intuitive enough. So this is just like night and day, awesome to be able to just find exactly what you need to get. And
I have more improvements planned. I want to change this so that when you do that, it'll actually take you to a page for the FT3DR, which maybe even has photos about it if we have any, and has maybe somewhat of a like a wizard saying, okay, what are you trying to do? And lets you choose the options, and I'll put together a little package for you. But one thing at a time.
Yeah, dude, the layout's great. And if you just for our guests listening, I mean, obviously we're pulling up the Signal Stuff website. So if you haven't been over there recently, definitely head over there. If you're looking to get connectors, antennas, whatever, maybe you can touch on it a little bit. So you guys started in antennas from a previous, kind of club effort, but you've obviously expanded quite more. And is there anything you guys want to showcase a little bit, or you got stuff, future plans you might want to share with us?
Well, so I sort of did adapters almost more on a whim. I already have to order, just SCADs. That's a technical measurement. We have just literal SCADs of connectors that we have to order at a time. And the same company that builds those connectors can do adapters. And so we were seeing enough people that were wanting to do, the BNC adapters. And so I said, well, do you have any of those? They do. Great. So I started ordering those. And then we decided to turn everything black. And then I realized that, hey, it would be really neat if we put this little rubber thing around on the SMA male adapter. And so we added that. And then we figured out that on some radios, the SMA female to BNC female adapters wouldn't fit down in because it was too narrow. So I had them narrow it by 0.5 millimeter. And I've ended up, it's gotten to the point where every connector, every adapter that we have has been slightly customized, if not completely made up from existing ones that they actually had. Like our SMAF to SMAF and SMA male to SMA male adapters are entirely custom. Nobody else has exactly that adapter, although I've seen some other similar customizations. The BNC male adapters are, I haven't seen anything like them anywhere else. They're the same direction exists, but not in as compact or as sleek looking of an effect as what we've got. Our most recent, though, that we just released, with the Black Friday sale, so a week and a half ago, are we call it the Signal Strand system, because that makes it 37% cooler than if we just called them counterpoises. I measured. That's the actual measurement.
I was looking at that.
But yeah, so it's basically got one of them right here. And so you've got the counterpoise wire, but the biggest challenge, obviously, counterpoise wire is just a wire with a connector on it. It's good quality wire, and I'm working on getting even better quality wire. But what the most interesting bit about it is finding a way to make it easy to connect to. And so I had these connectors custom made. Had to iterate on it a little bit.
Wow.
I don't know if you can see it any better on there, or I've got some here too, but yeah, those are probably better pictures than what I can do. And so it just has this little ring that goes down over, and then that nut that locks in. And other than that, it's just a standard adapter. It's obviously a little taller to make room for the threads, but makes it really easy to just add a counterpoise or a signal strand, as we call them, by just flipping it on there. This one, that picture is actually one that somebody from the Ham Radio Crash Course Discord server volunteered to me. He said, hey, I picked one of these up. I had those adapters at the HamCon Zion Ham Radio Convention in St. George over the summer. That would have been the day before I managed to injure my shoulder. See, everything comes back to that these days. But yeah, so we've had some people do some testing, but they seem to work pretty well. I'm not going to say that you always need a counterpoise, but it can be nice when you just want to get everything you can out of the antenna. That changes it from a quarter wave monopole into a half wave dipole, which makes it a much more efficient, more reliable antenna. So
that totally would have been helpful on the camp out for our soda, for sure. We had definitely some issues with our HTs a little bit. I mean, one of our guys that had a very long extended whip, but yeah, having the counterpoise, that would have definitely added a whole lot more.
Well, they're not magic, but I figure any little bit helps. And really on the adapters, I don't make that much money on them. If I make more than $1 or $2 on any adapter, it's uncommon, especially on, like, when I put them on sale, I probably sell them almost at cost. But I have the ability to make these. And so when I come across an adapter that it seems like is really needed, but doesn't exist, I've tried to find a way to create it. And then we have a few others that, like our PL259 and SO239 ones, I don't think are necessarily any better than what anyone else has, but it's just nice for people to be able to get something in the same place. So just kind of a question of, it's not any harder for me to start carrying some of this stuff. So I'm just adding on and doing what I can to have what my customers need.
Very cool. Now, do you guys have a suggestion system, or working towards a suggestion feature system that, folks can submit stuff that they've run into, or, there's a new radio out there that you guys haven't quite caught on to, or a little variant?
So the actual map of what connector on each antenna actually comes from a Google spreadsheet, which is publicly accessible, and I can send you that link if you want to add it to the comments.
Cool.
So you can, and that's, so that's free. Anybody who wants to use that for any purpose is welcome to do so. And if you find something, you can either, I believe, it's available for public comment. Like if you can make a comment on the spreadsheet saying, hey, add this, or hey, this takes this adapter, if there's one that we don't know, or you can just email orders at Signal Stuff, support at Signal Stuff, Richard at Signal Stuff. Almost any of those email addresses. If it seems like an email address that ought to go to me, it probably will go to me. I'm really hard to reach that way. But literally, if we add something to that spreadsheet, it will show up on the website within about 10 minutes.
Very cool. Nice.
The system will just automatically catch that change and rebuild and deploy the new site. So
awesome. Well, very cool. So, we've been going in the 2-hour mark, and we could probably talk for a couple more hours, I'm sure. And, we'd love to have you back on again. Obviously, if you got anything, you're more than welcome to come hang out with us anytime. You're, definitely welcome, both you and Ben. I assume probably Ben will be more available than you, Richard, but that's totally fine. Ben, come hang out, pass on whatever he's going to pass on, but, you're more welcome to,
next
share a
time he's
beverage
deep
with us.
in the process of developing something new and can't pull his head out.
Yes. And so, dude, I'm impressed. I hearing all the backstory with Signal Stuff and just, all three of the companies kind of under the same umbrella is just an impressive, story. But at the same time, like, dude, I'm we're all supporting you. We love the fact that, we've got folks like yourselves just really pushing that envelope and making the hobby that much easier, which, makes it way easier for us. Yeah. Yeah. Totally. But the fact that you decided to sit down and write an application, like I do software development, but I hate having to write software a lot of times. So I'm glad there are folks like you and Ben out there who are doing that stuff for us. So keep it going. And you guys, anything want to throw in the question or two, or we're up this up a little bit?
No, I use your antenna on my HT. It's my go-to antenna, and I move it from radio to radio. I should probably buy a couple more just so I don't have to keep switching them.
Absolutely. Definitely should.
Yeah,
I hear the BNC is really good. If you want to just keep using the same one, at least you can swap them fast that way.
Yeah, right. And I can't say enough about the HamStudy app. It's just getting better and better, and I'm looking forward to it. And like I said, I'm going to keep promoting it on here. I tell everyone we bring it up every day on the podcast. I go, that's what we recommend, and I'm using it every day. And I'll send you an email. I'm going to try your way and see if that helps, and I'll let you know how it goes. And hopefully, the next time you guys come on here, I'll be an extra instead of says still a general. It'll say extra, baby. Someday
you can do it.
Yeah, but thanks for coming on.
37 right.
Yeah, we really appreciate you guys coming on. It's great to have and hear all that. You had a lot of awesome information, how it all started. I think that's important for people to hear. And this podcast is really just about keeping people informed and getting them involved with ham radio and keeping the hobby going. So we appreciate it.
Thanks for the invitation. One thing that I guess the last thing that I would say is, Eric, when you pulled up that website, one of the first things that you see when you scroll down on that website is the information blurbs about HamStudy and ExamTools and Signal Stuff. And as has been said, that's really why we do this. The reason that the Signal Stuff site even exists is because it helps to make it possible for us to continue to make those other resources available for people for free. HamStudy, while there is a paid mobile app, the website is there and is completely free. Handbook is completely free. ExamTools can be used completely free. All these tools that we're making, our goal is not to become rich money grabbers. It's to make tools that make it possible for people to get into and to enjoy the hobby. And the Signal Stuff site, all of that is just the way that helps to make that possible.
Well, I would say,
so thanks for giving us the opportunity to come on and talk about that.
From a VE perspective, like I started as a VE when I was a general, right? So that was like April 21. I was brand new into the hobby, and I said I'm gonna get my VE right away. And I assisted with a couple in-person sessions, but getting into the online stuff, that opened my eyes to this world, and I was like, this could make things so much easier. And so watching how the local club was doing it, I couldn't wait to get things switched over. so I thank you for all the hard work that you guys are doing, because you just made my life so much easier to take over
My life too.
as the ARRL VEC liaison.
That's the goal. Glad we can help.
You know, I actually will be. We have our Christmas party coming up on Friday, and I believe there's like 9 people ordered 9. What are they? Quanchang or Baofeng. There's a good chance I'm going to get one. If I get one, I'm going to need an antenna for it. So I'll wait till Friday, and then Saturday morning you'll probably see my order.
You know, I have only one thing that I just love. Like, you know, you got this little about Signal stuff, and I really can't. I don't have my effect on, but like the way it reads, it's like something out of a trailer on a movie. In a world where amateur radio ought to be on the cutting edge of technology, it goes on. it's got to be amplified, man. But it's exact testament to what you guys are doing, and we appreciate all the stuff you guys are doing, and you know we'll continue to support you, and you know if you got anything going on like in the future, and actually before that, let's kind of like wrap this up a little bit. So you know, how can folks, if they if maybe say they're a VE in their own club and they've been doing paper for a while and they haven't quite figured out how to get into ExamTools, how can they reach out to both you and Ben and Richard? You know, what's the best way for them to reach out in that sense to be able to get more information or talk to you guys?
To be honest, the best way is probably not to reach out to us directly, though I'm happy to respond to emails. The best thing is just going to be to, if you go on exam.tools and scroll down a little bit, there's a link to the documentation. Now, keep in mind that is all written by volunteers, and so not all of us are meant to be technical writers. It's maybe not as simple as it could be, but if you kind of follow the links and are willing to wade through a little bit, everything you need to know for any level of usage of the software is on there. And then there's also links there to get on the amateur radio volunteer examiner Discord server, which is where you'll find the largest gathering that I'm aware of ExamTools users. And though we welcome people whether they use ExamTools or not, but one thing that I'm always very aware of, especially with ExamTools, if something goes wrong and you need help and I'm not around, that needs to not become an emergency and a disaster for your team. And so there are other, the role in Discord is called experience support. There are people who are experience support who have admin access to ExamTools that they can get in and help troubleshoot issues. And there's other people who know how to use the system. So it's really better to find other users of the system and to get information from and to ask questions and such from them rather than coming to us directly, which serves two purposes. One is it keeps us from becoming the bottleneck for things getting done. It also frees us up to improve the software further rather than spending all of our time evangelizing.
Yeah, very good. Yeah, so you heard it here. Go to those links. We'll make sure they're in our show notes as well. If you're researching ExamTools, you want to know more about it. That way, you can get your answers quickly and get your feet underneath there and moving, on the ground running. So cool. And how about you, Ben? Any final things you want to add to it, or a way people can reach out to you if they got questions? Or
no, I think what Richard just said is it. We've got a great community that's been built up around this. I think that one of the great side effects of volunteering is that it's not about you, it's about the community. And that's what we've been able to, we didn't build it, but it's been built up around this, and it supports each other. And I think that really is the best way to get help, is to go to the community, because it's a very strong, very helpful community.
Very cool. I agree with that too as well. I mean, definitely they're there to help you guys and keep you out of being in the front of the bus all the time. So yeah, good to hear that. So awesome. All right. Well, with that, let's kind of put a little bow on this. Again, thank you, Richard. Thank you, Ben, for coming to hang out with us. We appreciate it. I learned a lot. I'm super excited to be a part of more of what you guys are doing and supporting you here like we've always been doing. It just makes it that much better when we do our small little segments with Todd, and once that's finally done and whatnot, but we'll still continue to profess HamStudy there and ExamTools, and especially Signal Stuff. And I've already got my shopping cart kind of almost completed there, so I've got a couple of radios I have to get done. And so that, again, thank you guys for everybody listening to him, Live Free and Ham. We always appreciate all you guys. And we appreciate all the support that you guys, do for us and for all of our folks like HamStudy. So keep it up and continue to support the ham radio hobby. And so, again, if you haven't had a chance to pick up our Live Free and Ham whiskey bourbon glasses, don't wait any longer because there's only a limited supply out there, unlike Signal Stuff, because they have antennas galore and they're glue until the cows come home and even way beyond that. So, keep plugging away. But, we only have a limited order of those whiskey drams. So, make sure you head over to our storefront, pick those up. And once they're gone, they're gone. And so, we forgot to mention, but, we've mentioned in previous episodes, we've got our Hammies project that we've started for a little while. So if you go over to getham.com, you can pick up your little hammies and, show your love, similar to kind of how the Jeepers have their ducks. Well, we've got hammies. So now if you see a guy or gal with antennas on their trucks, you can hit them up with the little hammies there. Put your call sign in there and tell them you got hammed, and just to show some love in the ham radio hobby. So, check that out more if you want to learn more about that. And if you always want to connect with us, you can head over to our Discord server. Again, that is a great place to hang out. We always love to talk about the shows. And like we had mentioned, in our earlier in the show, we obviously are doing a live stream with our Shack Roast. So hopefully you got a chance to put those in there. We've been, promoting that a lot. And, you can always head over to our YouTube channel to catch all the awesome content over there and use our SMS and email and our phone number at 978-233-1142 in the bottom if you're watching this on our YouTube channel. And please help continue to support the show, either through our Buy Us a Beer links or our Patreons. And as always, you can always head over to livefreeandham.com to learn more about the show, check out the latest swag, and find out all the information about our hosts and info there. And again, as always, thanks again for listening. And from all of us at Live Free and Ham, 7-3.
7-3.
7-3.